I wouldn't recommend that. Now if you look closely, there's stressing in the blades of the repair here are already going overboard. This thing needs some hardwire to help distress the surface. Definitely not perfect. We're doing a little bit of a blade service here on this one. Took the blades all out. We got some filling to do here. The way I took the blade out is just welding the bolt to the sides. That's the easiest way to do it. Weld the bolt to the side of the blade, and then you zip them out. Okay, now this blade, I noticed, see what they got here is a weld. They welded the blades. I wouldn't recommend that. Now if you look closely, there's stressing in the blade, and it's cracking the edges. And I think this is because they're using a hard facing. Now, they could have had another flip out of this. That's a stock side there. All they do is take the thing and flip it around the other way. Just like that. Put the old edge into the back, and you have that new edge available to use. Not sure why you would want to weld it, other than it's a pain in the butt to do the service on these, because you're having to take out the bolts, and all the centers are a pain to get out. And the way you get these out here is by heating them up with a rosebud. This is a really big rosebud. Heat it up, and actually it's a really fast process to use a rosebud on that and heat them up, and then you can knock them out and get it nice and red hot. For this one, we're not going to do a lot to it. I'm going to see if I can fill in some of this edge. Really, this thing needs some hardwire to help distress the surface. So maybe I do a pass down the side, maybe right here too. And actually, this has got enough hard facing on it that it's gonna, when you lay down a mild steel, it's gonna actually be really hard still. And that's also the reason why we always grind down or scarf off the surface. And the tip here is wore down a lot, so this has to be built up. Probably come to here on it, and we'll probably lay down some hard facing on that. This here was probably torched, and they threw hard facing along the edge here. They built it up with hard facing, I'm pretty sure, and that's not good. So we'll see about this. I might leave it, don't know, because this is a blade service, and I think we're just trying to do a quick job with it from what I'm hearing. So yeah, we got a little bit of work to do, and I think this thing will be ready to go. Another spot here needs to be taken care of. The other side's the same way, and there's just literally a pocket here, and it needs to be filled. Yeah, I'm not liking this at all. This thing actually needs a lot more work than I think the customer is wanting. So we'll just see how it goes, because this thing's a mess. And I already saw that right away. This was broken before. Looks like it's doing the job. Yeah, not pretty, but it will do work again once I'm done with it. I was grinding over here. Then I looked over my shoulder. Boom! First fire in the shop. I just had some packing paper. It caught fire because the metal shavings were coming this way, and it went and combusted some paper. I guess I don't have there's the paper that was on the blades here, and I was peeling it off, and I threw it over here. There you go, there's some paper. Yeah, just like that. Got this all filled in, did the work here, got it all flat, and the whole bottom has a whole pass on that. It's got a little bit of extra material, which is nice. Good passes here. Torque marks here, I'm not going to do anything about this time, given the expectations of the repair here are already going overboard. So this is going to be alright, but ideally you'd want to hit that with weld. Maybe I will, really. I probably will. Just depends on how hard it's going to be to clean out of there once I weld it. You know, this is happening because they're taking a torch to the bolts because they're having a hard time getting them out. really you need to use a scarfing tip on your torch, or there is a way to use a straight tip and turn up the oxygen side, and then you'll also melt away the steel more so than you will cutting through it. Cleaned this stuff out, welded it up, used the torch, heated it up, used the needle scaler, and then pounded the crap out of the crevices. Now I just have to use between that there and this tool here, angle grinder. It's just gonna fit inside these holes. Hopefully I can clean it out, and that will be the harder part. Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Other blade pocket done and smoothed out the other end, built up the corners, took care of that nasty crap that had the hard facing. The way I cleaned the hard facing crap was just I heated it up with the torch over here, heated it up, nearly melted the surface, and then you beat it out with the needle scaler, and then that should resolve any glass particles that are caught in the weld area. I was asked about the Cubitron discs, and these are the Cubitron 3M, and that's the number you're going to look for if you want to know what style that is. And then this is just a collection of tools I was using for today, trying to clean up the pockets, and I figured I'd let you know what all I'm using. My Tabo, that's the 14 amp, lost its sticker. The DeWalt needle scaler, that there, you're gonna want a good quality needle scaler. And then the angle grinder, Irwin. Then, normally I'll swap the pads, the small little grinder pads, into the angle grinder, and I clean out the pockets with that up in here. And the burbot, that's for spots like this, so I can get the corners and also run along edges like that. Coming into the pockets here, just barely touching it, and the bolt hole area can barely touch that. Clean it up. Angle grinder, like I said before, coming into these pocket holes and cleaning up the scarfing marks. Right now this pocket is ready for blades, and that there's going in. With this UP40, you're going to put your shims in place, and then you're going to see how close you are to the edge of the dowel. If it's right up close to the dowel's edge and it's even, you got the right shim thickness. And there's sometimes a couple different thicknesses of the shim, so you're going to want to make sure you're checking to make sure everything's the same on the whole side of the blade on this end. So these are both the same. Let's stick both of them right here, and then we're gonna bolt it up, and then we'll close the UP40. The majority of this thing's been shimmed already, and I only have maybe a 2/1000ths difference between the blade here and maybe a 5/1000ths difference between those two blades. Looking decent. And this one here, about the same story. So there's a little variance, but we'll see how this looks as soon as we shut it. Gotta take one shim out of the bottom, and we gotta do a lot of work here. The bottom is tight, and the sides here, I got a lot of gap still. The other side looks a lot better, but still gotta get it tighter. If you look at the pocket and the blade, you see that gap. If you take a look at the blades and where my straight edge is, you can see there's a gap in the middle right here of the blades, and it's because the pocket is shoved in this direction. It's going out, so I have to somehow adjust for that, and I'm not sure if it's going to be feasible or not. The other thing I see is when the tip comes down through, it's got more of a gap on the tip versus back here. It's not entirely straight. I'm just trying to see what I got to do to get creative about this, because this jaw is probably a little off, because when that was welded, it was welded a little crooked, and that's hard to do. So I'm just gonna see if I can deal with it. This is why we're constantly making custom shim plates for the pocket blades to correct any issues. And over time, stuff just gets bowed and wore out. So it's not that it won't shear. Right now it could shear. It will do some work, but we need to make it better and so it can be maintained again. The bottom, I just need to pull one of the shims out. I got it shimmed a little bit too tight. So once I pull that out, this bottom blade's gonna be perfect. What I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna grab some of my shims and I'm just gonna start throwing it into pocket area by hand. I'm gonna stack them up just like this, shove them in there. I'm gonna shove as many in this crevice as I can, and then that's gonna give me roughly how many shims I need to shim that blade out. And then we're gonna go from there, and I'm gonna see if I have to actually do some sort of custom plate to correct the pocket. So if you grab a pry bar here and stick it in the end, I'm just curious to see how much play we got. I got a little bit of play in it. I'm thinking it's not much more than 30 thousandths. Well, this is what you do to check for play and see how bad your bearings are right here. So it's not too bad. So I have to account for that when I shim this pocket. And the other side, I have to account for how much play is in this and make sure that nothing's gonna hit anything when it comes down through. So it looks like maybe 30 thousandths is what I have to account for. And these normally have a lot of slop and they're wore out. So we'll see how this goes. I might have to think about it more. When you take a shim out though, you're also now going the opposite direction. You don't want to have too few of shims. I'm shooting for a 15 thousandths gap and then like a 5 thousandths clean out on the blades. And that's how you want to set the machine. Now I'm at 30, so I have to account for that, take out a few thousandths, and then I'll have 30 thousandths of movement. It's not great, but we'll have to just do that in order to get this thing on the road again. I have these dowel shims. Here's the part number. The dowel shims go directly into the pocket on this side of the dowel, and you can stack them like this, so you can do 3 at least, I don't know, but don't go more than half of the dowel depth. Okay, so that you don't want to over shim it. So on this UP40 I have the option to shim both the top and the bottom, so you're going to want to try to split up all the shims. So I have 2 shims. One shim goes on the top, one shim goes on the bottom. Split up the spacing and the shim plates, one on the bottom, one on the top, and stick these in the equal amount of dowel spacers with the shim. All right, so to have it pretty well figured out to where this thing's going to do work again, the shim plate is customized. It'll be narrower back here and wider as it goes to the front, because that's what this one needs. It seems like to me when they welded this back together, it was all straightened on the one side, and then this side was left open. So this here is pretty straight. As you can see, I barely modified the shims. So I have 3 here and 3 here. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, that's right. And the same amount of shims on this side. And I've just left it. There's a slight bow in it, if you can see it right here. That's because over time both sides of the shear will bow out in that direction. And the only way you're going to correct that is going to be custom shim plates like I got over here on this side. That's a custom shim plate. You can kind of see the taper as it's coming through the top down. Okay, and I even added another shim plate there to close this in, and there's a slight overlap, and that's going to be whatever the shim plate here is, because I wanted that tighter. And the only way to get this to mesh is to grind that blade down a little bit. You can grind the blades, there's nothing wrong with that. Just try not to go overboard with it. you know, I'm just talking in the case of old machinery. With old machines, that's what you got to do. That's the reality of getting these back to work. So if you want to do a service on them, that's just the reality. So I filled in a gap that was right there. You'll probably notice that. Okay, this here's shim quite tight, probably a little too tight, but that's pretty good actually. It's gonna loosen up over time. So yeah, it's definitely not perfect, and I wished it was a little bit better. One thing I'll note is I want more shims on the bottom side than I do the top side. I don't know if that's a big issue or not, but yeah, these particular bolts are a 10.9, and the torque on them is like a 460 pounds of torque, and you can do your own. You can look up your own torques based on the shank size and the strength of the bolt. You can do your own research on that. Yeah, this thing's ready to go. I don't think it was really worth doing. This thing's pretty well used. I would like to see that pocket welded up and refaced in a mill or hand milled, and that thing needs to be pitched probably at this point, but I bet you they'll get a lot more use out of it.